So what I want to talk, I do want to talk a little bit about where we're going. And it seems to me that in a way we come and have these meetings every year and we have a sense of, we're asking where the future is. Well, the future's already here, but there's this huge array of very effective studies underway, sets of concepts being applied, continued development of concepts. I like the point about using promissory issues of performativity rather with care, with caution. So the theory of performativity as applied to understanding scientific is being developed. And so we're developing conceptually, we're also applying these concepts to new techno-scientific fields. And we also see the way that some of the concepts from STS are being extended to understand, for example, policy process for immigration, non-technical expertise. How they're being used to understand how Donald Mackenzie's work on how the technology of markets are being constructed, and Neil's work on how markets for technology are constructed. So extending it to areas outside the normal scope that we saw as the scope of technology studies. And we talked about social materiality. Where's Trevor? Introduces to us the idea of social materiality and the point that Pablo made about not seeing that at the moment of interaction between a human and an object, but actually how the point of contact between the social and the technical actually is taking place over quite extended periods of time. And I really liked the talk that Alison James gave because it showed how, when you move to a society with a radically different social infrastructure, some of the features of a taken for granted technical infrastructure just don't work. And it's to do with temperature, it's to do with people, and their geography and knowledge. And so, it seems to me that one of the interesting challenges that we have looked at, we've been looking here at work on information infrastructures. And the question is how technical infrastructures and social infrastructures are coupled together. And the infrastructure word in studies of technology signals the way here is a shift away from artifact, away from the language of system, to systems of systems, extending over many places with multiple users over extended periods of time. So we see an attempt to shift the study of technology over many locales and temporal frames. And it seems that we also need to look at how the social infrastructure and the social fabric and the often invisible interpenetration or collision between the features of the social infrastructure and the technical infrastructure. And I think that's one thing I've taken from this workshop and I would hope to carry forward. Another one also that came up in the course of discussions was about the different forms of expertise. And how, for example, traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge differ in their claims, and the difficulties we have in combining them. And that applies, again, in a third world setting, in relation to technologies for sparse environments, or in relation to the kind of work that Xiaobei's been doing on GM in traditional agricultural communities, but it also applies to the work that Graham and Luke Bisbee were doing in relation to fire safety. And how is it that people's everyday knowledge of fire risks is or is not different and compatible with scientific knowledge of fire risks. Sometimes everyday knowledge gets you into danger, and sometimes scientific knowledge or codified knowledge gets you into danger. And do we have ways of thinking how those different knowledge systems can be challenged, can be combined together? So it seems to me that there were, in this workshop, some interesting new kind of tanglings between different perspectives that it's worth drawing attention to. But the other thing I mentioned in the beginning statement about the various existing strands that made up ISSTI, and I mentioned very briefly that there were new engagements and engagements with other colleagues, other centres recently launched who weren't part of the original ISSTI constituency, but whose arrival bring challenges and opportunities, and in particular they bring more complex disciplinary configurations. So we're working with the law school. They do law and they do social and legal studies. They do stuff on privacy, they do stuff on technology, they do law, they do stuff on intellectual property, and we're engaging with them both in works on life science, but also works on ICT and the digital economy. We've got, actually today we didn't get anybody from the Edinburgh College of Art because they had a clashing commitment when we scheduled this, unfortunately. Increasing presence of people from the business school, people from public health, big presence of people from social anthropology and African studies doing work on international development. And then we see, I mean, actually ISSTI funding hasn't been going particularly well for us recently. Social science funding is being increasingly competitively secured, but actually some successes in getting money from science funding bodies like EPSRC, Jane, and Graham's Royal Academy of Engineering. And that's often for quite deep interdisciplinary collaborations with colleagues in science and engineering and medicine. So very new and deep encounters which take place there. And this changing character of our network of research collaborations actually poses for us new coordination challenges. How do we keep in touch with each other? But it also has some epistemological challenges. So I think in the past we've had a kind of comfort zone when we've been able to keep discussions within a community that understands the core foundational principles of science and technology studies. It becomes less comfortable as we get forced to take place with these other kinds of collaborations, and where we can't presume that STS is the central set of ideas around which the collaboration takes place. Sometimes STS is secondary or tertiary, and of course we can say, I think with some truth, that STS has some very powerful tools and has a huge conceptual arsenal, which are, and of course they're quite readily applicable in other settings. We're quite good, we're quite ingenious at applying these concepts to purposes for which they were not intended. But at the same time, we need to find ways both of doing our own stuff and working in collaboration with others, and that's sometimes not an easy arrangement to sustain. It'd be interesting to discuss with the SynBio crew and the fire safety crew. You know, how is it different and similar? How do we actually do that discussion? I mean, you guys are going to go and talk to a bunch of Korean synthetic biologists who've never heard of social sciences, and suddenly you're going to have to explain to them why social science might be relevant for them. So we need to be able to work in those combined spaces, but at the same time we need to avoid being absorbed by those combined spaces where our work is reduced to, oh, here we talk about the risk governance of synthetic biology, or here we talk about the ethics of synthetic biology, approaches which leave synthetic biology there and what the social scientists and others do somewhere else. And we need techniques, I think, both for presentation but also ways of remembering how to do good STS work as well as do good work in that interdisciplinary space. How can we actually publish and perform in both of those spaces in tandem? And that's going to be an interesting thing for us. Another thing I wanted to flag particularly is STS or STIS. Yeah, actually I think this has been a very good STS retreat. I think we haven't, and we've had fantastic participation from our colleagues from the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Studies group in Business Studies and other people from the business school. It's been great to have them here. Actually, but however, the frameworks which have been labelled as innovation studies, which some people are proposing as a separate intellectual pathway, an intellectual pathway that's focused upon work on business strategy, that's focused upon work on national systems of innovation, certain kinds of approaches in science and technical policy, focus on particular approaches, for example, large-scale national surveys, rather than the historical or case study work that we feel comfortable with. So some are suggesting that innovation studies should be a separate pathway. We find at a European level, for example, attempts to set up European networks of innovation studies centres. And interestingly, when they did that, they didn't recognise that there was a field called STS. They saw themselves, the people from the business schools in particular, saw themselves as a different space. Now I think Edinburgh is exceptional. I think Edinburgh is exceptional in many ways. It's exceptional because we cover many different technological fields. It's exceptional because we cover historical and contemporary and life science and IT and financial markets and defence and fire. We cover all those fields. And that's an extraordinary challenge, but also an extraordinary strength. But one of the ways we're exceptional is that we have a more or less balanced prospectus of work across different traditions within STIS. But at the moment, the I bit, the IS, hasn't been necessarily foreground and hasn't necessarily been well integrated with the science and technology studies bit. I have to say, I think that STS will be weakened as a disciplinary project and as an intellectual project if we let innovation studies become a separate domain, applying with different values and different methods and different tools, and with cognitive authority over different areas. Because I don't want to cede cognitive authority over those areas of science and technology policy, for example, or corporate strategy and technology. I don't want to cede that cognitive authority. But I think both STS and IS will be weakened if we don't manage to actually have an integration between those traditions. And one of the things I hope to have, one of the debates I'd hope to have over the coming year is about what should the relationship be between STS and innovation studies. And we've been having very interesting discussions with Mario Biagioli in California somewhere, with Ari Rip and the colleagues at Twente and other places, about whether we shouldn't set up a network of international centres wanting to do work in STIS, and actually flag and embrace the distinctive opportunities that arise from having that broadened view and resisting, in a sense, the demarcation efforts which come from not our business schools, but some other business schools, some other economics departments, and some sections, we have to say, of STS for whom it's more comfortable to sit within a narrow conception of where we go. Now, what I thought we'd get is, I did think we'd have at the end of this workshop a bigger list of grand challenges, but unfortunately we didn't quite have a methodology for doing it. We should have interviewed the PhD students, then we'd know what the grand challenges were. But we can have some pointers. One of the debates I didn't quite manage to get to work was between Stuart and Kate and Nadja, because Stuart couldn't be here together, but it seems to me that there is something big data, little data, fast and slow data. There is something happening in the world of science, which we need science, well, knowledge, and what the Americans call knowledge infrastructures. There's something happening there which are of concern to a group like us. Actually, there's a lot happening. And it may be good if we can get some purchase on these different components. One is what's happening with e-science and open science, very different models of scientific process and scientific publication, citizens coming in, and what are its dimensions. Another one is very specifically around a common interest that exists across, for example, the Mason Institute in Law, amongst people here, and our friends in medicine, in vet medicine, about data and biomedical research. And that has some obvious legal and ethical and social issues, but these are issues which I think would be distinctively better addressed by an approach which was informed by STS, in which those different dimensions, the scientific dimension and the ethical dimension, were thoroughly brought together. We saw, actually, with Stuart's talk, although it was kind of slightly unfinished, showed that there's some very interesting stuff about the different affordances of information in different settings, even between two disease areas. That's really interesting. That's a really interesting challenge for STS colleagues to deal with. Yeah, we can probably get some money out of the Digital Economy Research Network, because they're interested in new economic models in the digital economy. But also, what's happening to social science in a world which is increasingly subject to intensive information systems. And Gianmarco and I have recently launched a Digital Research Challenges Masters. We're going to do an online master's course. And one of our concerns is that conventional sociology is going to become divorced from its very subject matter. Because conventional sociology, as currently taught, is primarily emphasising qualitative interpretive approaches, and although they're increasingly screaming at the students to do quantitative methods has become very boring stuff and very inaccessible stuff, and the students are terrified and they're running away from it. So sociology has become a primarily interpretive account with rather weak quantitative methods. Well, we're actually suggesting that maybe with these new powerful information processing tools and new kinds of data available, maybe we should try and say quantitative methods could be fun and digital research could be fun. So these are going to be and then, well, Martin's not here today, but I was listening to the Radio 4 program about these brain research programs, and that's clearly really exciting. Huge scale activities. Now, who was it? You mentioned, how do we respond to the availability of research funding. I think we respond in like we can't use the word positive, but the equivalent, the non-sexist version. We absolutely sell ourselves. Yeah? If we find an area of social uncertainty, which we can leverage, we can secure money for it. And that's what we've done again and again and again. And ICT was new and desperate when we started ICT program for education. Then bloody hell it became genetics, and that was daily. Now that's every day. Thank goodness nanotechnology arrived just in time. And now we've got implanted brain stuff, human improvement, and the brain program. So we haven't thought, we've never really theorised why we attend to some things and not to others, why we attend to synthetic biology again and not to systems biology. I'm sure you're aware of that. And that's a fundamental issue that STS has absolutely been unwilling to bring into the open and discuss. So, but on the other hand, I think there's money to be made in the brain, let's just remember that. So there's money in brains. So then it seems to me that Justin, we're about to end, so don't worry about the panda. This changing character of our community, which is extraordinarily dynamic. I mean, I was kind of really amazed by how many people turned up and what kind of lively presentation we had. That it's a very vibrant community, and it's working as a network of interlocking networks, not entirely separate, with some points of encounter and some cross-working, but can we make it work better as a network of networks? And ISSTI is the kind of form which exists to try and make that network. Well, ISSTI has a kind of deliberately lightweight, flexible organisational form, and it is actually, in a sense, it's a thing that's performed by the members. The aim, of course, is to, if you're running a network, a successful network, the benefits of membership must be greater, and hopefully much greater, than the cost of membership. Otherwise, you don't join. Yeah? So we have to find some way of keeping the costs of membership very low and the benefits of membership very high. And those benefits might be securing external research income, might be knowledge dissemination, might be publication and working together in publication. But I believe there are strong benefits of collaboration, but we need to find ways to explore synergies without undue coordination costs. And we have a problem with some of the networks we've had in the university. Some of us are part of an e-health network, and that's produced wonderful enlightenment, but no bids. And one of the reasons is you get this kind of shoal effect, where there are so many opportunities coming up, you never know which to actually respond to, and so you respond to none. Or if you do respond, you respond too little and too late. So we need to find a way of prioritising areas of research where we should be pursuing, prioritising funding bodies that we should be pursuing, and also thinking of different stages in people's careers when they may be best equipped to exploit different funding opportunities and different collaborations that might. So I think we could improve ISSTI's organisation. In particular way, I think, is that now we have so many different bodies as in the ISSTI network. We're trying to get kind of various linchpin players to act as kind of informal coordinators and kind of help steer this program of programs. So, and so, both to keep track of where the opportunities are, and then every now and then say, well, we should be doing something. The same way I'm saying to colleagues in the Mason Institute and others, we should be doing stuff about biomedical data. Now it's time, and it's happening, and we need to make sure we're part of that happening. So we need to think about how to organise to do that. And we've got kind of very successful newsletter. We might make better use of the web. The PhD students, we've been doing fantastic stuff, not only within STIS, but with a wider network of people. And I think one of the reasons that such a lively group has been that expanded view of membership. But maybe there are other forums, and we'd be happy to have comments about that. Now I've run out of time. Okay, I'm not going to go on anymore. I'm going to say some thanks. Unfortunately, Anne had to go back to deal with stuff that because there's no internet, she had business to deal with. Well, thanks to STIS for co-funding this event. Thanks, Steve. Thanks to Anne Valentine and Geraldine DeBar, who worked really hard in sorting out this wonderful venue and then making sure everything happened very, very smoothly. Thanks to Valerie for being our camera person and other forms of technical support. And thanks for Trevor, wherever he is. There. Okay. Our esteemed guest speaker. Next year we'll try and get Pinch and Biker together, and then we can really do something. It's a bit like the Three Doctors, yeah? you can move through time. But very helpful. And wonderful speakers and very effective panel presentations. And so, can we acknowledge them and of course the pandas within Emma, you were going to make the elephant go.
Did you?
Oh, I didn't hear it, sorry. Sorry, so we now have to make an orderly retreat. Those who are going to the pandas should follow Geraldine, because we need to get there in about 3, 4, 5 minutes at most. So others can just hang around and clear away as they wish. Thanks for joining
So you're going to sit better?
Yes, yeah.
Are we going to